Now at 5, a former federal worker laid off by the Trump administration is sharing his story and struggle.
You don't go in with a chainsaw and start tearing things apart.
Plus, Oregon lawmakers hear from gun safety advocates as data shows the state leads the West Coast in firearm deaths.
While we are making good progress, we still remain significantly behind.
And St. John's residents speak out after finding out their community center could be on the chopping block. Thanks so much for joining us here at 5. I'm John Adams. Many federal workers from several agencies have been facing termination due to the Trump administration's recent moves to cut the federal workforce. Our Celine Stevens spoke with one worker who was fired from his position at the IRS last month. She joins us in the studio. Celine, what'd you find out?
John, so the man I spoke with today wished to remain anonymous for this interview, but he did want to share his story. Now, he's been through a lot. He was a federal probationary employee for 7 months, but then received that termination letter last month just as he was recovering from surgery after being diagnosed with cancer.
The day after I returned from the hospital, I received my official notice of termination on February 20th.
This is part of the termination letter this former federal probationary employee with the IRS received after working in that position for 7 months.
It was quite a blow when I received that notice of termination. To be told that our positions were being terminated based on performance was a real slap in the face.
That letter followed him receiving an email at the end of January requesting his resignation, with the deadline to decide being on February 6th, 1 day after surgery for his cancer that had returned.
I chose not to accept that offer. One, being concerned about my health, and two, just not certain of whether or not the offer was valid.
But then on February 20th, he learned he was terminated.
It really struck deep in that I took this position with a great deal of pride. I also was told and believed that my position with the federal government was going to be secure and offer financial stability and long-term security, and something that I could eventually retire with.
He's not the only one. The Trump administration has cut thousands of federal workers from a range of departments across the board to intentionally reduce the federal workforce, including from the IRS, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Education Department, and more.
When we cut, we want to cut, but we want to cut the people that aren't working or not doing a good job. We're keeping the best people.
However, federal judges have ordered the thousands fired to be temporarily reinstated, but this former employee says he still doesn't know where his position stands, and he wants to protect his chances.
There is a real fear of reprisal, and I do not wish to put my face or name out there and jeopardize my reinstatement.
He says he believes there was a better way to streamline the federal government, and now he's left to pick up the pieces.
To put this amount of stress and uncertainty on people's lives who have devoted themselves to trying to improve this nation is just a complete disregard for what makes this country great.
This man also has a son with significant health issues, and with him being the primary provider, he's also had to deal with finding new insurance and filing for unemployment while trying to find a new position if he's not reinstated. As for some better news, he also says the surgery was successful, and most importantly, he is now cancer-free again. John?
All right, at least some good news there. Our Celine Stevens tonight. Thank you, Celine. All right, turning now to weather. Nearly 20 inches of new snow has fallen outside Timberline Lodge in just the past 24 hours. There was plenty of snow for skiers and snowboarders to hit the slopes this weekend. As you can see from this time-lapse video, the crowds were packed up there this weekend. Meteorologist Joe Ranieri has more on what the scene in the mountains is going to look like this week. Joe?
It's going to look like winter. It's going to look really pretty up there. This is the last Sunday of winter. Spring officially starts on Thursday, and we are going to be looking at some cooler conditions. No big warm up anytime soon, but we have canceled the weather impact alert throughout the Oregon Cascades because they've seen 32 inches of snow, to be precise, over the last couple of days, and over the last 24 hours it's closer to 20 inches. You can kind of see Looking at some drier weather throughout the northwest side of the state, but over in wine country, parts of McMinnville and Yamhill County picking up some light showers. There's still that flood watch in place throughout the central and southern part of the Willamette Valley. But as we go into the later part of tonight, the Portland area is going to be dry as a bone. A few spotty showers along Tillamook and a little bit over into parts of Salem, kind of heavy at times, but then go into the overnight hours. Again, we'll start to see some showers move through, but again, it's going to be basically south of Salem. Meanwhile, the Oregon Cascades, the central Oregon Cascades, we'll start to see some snow showers move in. We'll also see the snow in the forecast for tomorrow and into Tuesday as well. Tuesday morning, as we kind of jump ahead a little bit, we'll see more dry than wet conditions, I think, but still showers will be in the forecast over the next few days. And looking at some of the watches and warnings, again, that winter storm warning in place throughout the Oregon Cascades until tonight at 11. Flood watch throughout the central and southern part of the Willamette Valley through this evening as well. As we look at the conditions up in the Oregon Cascades, temperature-wise, we're looking at the low 20s right now. Again, the snow level will remain below past levels over the next few days, so it is looking pretty pristine up there right now. It's going to continue to be that way over the next few days. I'll talk more about your local forecast in just a few minutes.
All right, sounds good, Joe. We'll see you later in the show. All right, let's take a look at some of tonight's headlines. The deadly storms that ravage much of the South and the Midwest this weekend are heading east today. At least 36 people have died across Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Alabama, and Mississippi. The severe weather left behind damaged structures, uprooted trees, and power outages. Some highways were also blocked by downed trees and debris. According to early reporting, there were nearly 600 reported storms Friday and Saturday. More than 60 of those were tornadoes. Voice of America is on its way to being gutted. President Trump signed an executive order late Friday gutting the parent agency of the U.S.-backed media outlet and 6 other small federal agencies. The order also targets agencies providing funding for museums, libraries, and tackling homelessness, and calls for the agencies to reduce their operations to the bare minimum consistent with applicable law. VOA, overseen by the U.S. Agency for Global Media, operates in more than 40 languages online, as well as on radio and television. And Pope Francis celebrated Mass today among priests while recovering in a hospital in Rome. The Vatican released the first photo of the 88-year-old pontiff in the hospital since he began treatment for double pneumonia in mid-February. According to the Vatican, the Pope remains stable and continues his physical and respiratory therapy. Back here in Oregon, Woodburn police arrested a driver on multiple charges after allegedly hitting and killing a pedestrian early this morning. Around 1:45, officers were called to the area of Silverton Avenue and Pacific Highway, where they found both the pedestrian and the driver. The pedestrian was declared dead at the scene. The driver, 27-year-old Santino Saldana, was arrested for DUII, criminally negligent homicide, and assault. And this afternoon, Beaverton police arrested another driver on DUII after their vehicle crashed into a restaurant. It happened around 12:30 at Togo's Sandwiches along Southwest Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and 9th Avenue. Police say no one was hurt, but the car narrowly missed hitting a customer. The driver was also booked on reckless driving, endangering, and criminal mischief charges. Police say gun violence has rocked the city of Portland and all corners of our state since the pandemic. Oregon's firearms fatality rate is now higher than neighboring states, and as our Libby Dowsett reports, children often experience the collateral damage.
Gun safety advocates say Oregon is leading the pack when it comes to firearm fatalities on the West Coast. It leads both Washington and California, but that's not even counting the secondary victims who have had their lives shattered by gun violence.
On the night that Will died, he was experiencing a severe mental health crisis, and there was a fully loaded, unsecured, and easily accessible handgun laying out in the house where he was staying that night.
Testifying before lawmakers in Salem, Carol Manstrom shares the story of her 18-year-old son's death by suicide on Valentine's Day 2017.
He was a senior in high school at that time. He was on the varsity track team and cross-country team and chess teams. and he was looking forward to attending Oregon State University with a major in engineering.
Gun safety advocates say kids in homes with firearms are 4 times more likely to die from youth suicide. And firearm injuries are the leading cause of death among U.S. children.
Me and my colleagues, we see this as a very important issue that we need to take seriously.
Pediatric psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Nicolai tells Oregon lawmakers he too feels the effects while helping gun violence victims.
I see them when they do survive, and the injuries are quite gruesome, where they have permanent pain, disfigurement, multiple surgeries. Very emotionally challenging for me to work with, and I work with a lot of people who are struggling and in crisis.
Jess Marks from the Alliance for a Safe Oregon compares gun safety measures in Oregon, Washington, and California.
Things like having a state gun dealer license, which addresses illegal guns flowing into our streets, banning rapid fire devices, having a waiting period.
She said banning ghost guns created without serial numbers and ensuring weapons are locked up away from children are solutions that will save lives. But that doesn't help Carol Manstrom, whose younger son, Dave, developed PTSD from the tragic day his brother died.
Dave was in the car with me when I drove to the site where Will was. Within the next couple years, Dave spent 1 year in a residential mental health treatment program. That's an example of a life shattered because of gun violence.
OHSU gun violence prevention researchers say between 2019 and 2023, there were 18 mass shootings in Oregon, and 77% of the state's firearm deaths were related to suicide. Libby Dowsett, KGW News.
Thank you for that reporting, Libby. People in the St. John's neighborhood say they were shocked to find out their local community center could be on the chopping block. This past week, Portland City Administrator proposed possible cuts to a handful of community centers, including St. John's, to eat into the estimated $93 million budget shortfall. Last night, people in the neighborhood pushed back on the proposed closure at a community event hosted by City Councilor Alana Pirtle-Guinea.
Businesses that just opened would close down. We barely recovered from COVID, and there are new businesses moving into that area. Vacant homes have been filled with new families. Those all go away.
City councilors will hold listening sessions across Portland in March and April to gather feedback on budget cuts. The next session in District 2 will be on April 3rd.